Now I'm a visual learner. Not everyone is, but I do better if I have something to look at or there's a prop or a picture. It's just the way I learn best. Some of you may be more audio learners. You don't need to look at junk. You just need to say, give me the words. And if that's the case, if you're an audio learner, then you can just close your eyes and listen, and you don't have to look at anything. If you fall asleep, that's okay. Just try not to snore too loud. And yet others of you may choose to read as your primary way to learn. I don't need to hear it, I don't need to look at it, I just want to read it. And if reading is your primary way of learning, you can leave now, and I'll have a copy of the sermon next week for you to read. So, any takers? All right, you're in. One last disclaimer before I really begin. I'm not a professional potter. I'm not even much of an amateur potter, just a guy with an idea. So when we get to the pottery part, it will be more of a demonstration of pottery techniques rather than a display of my great skill as a potter. If you happen to be a potter and are better than I am, please don't laugh or come and help me. I'll take either. That being said, let's get started. The sermon, as you now know if you looked at the bulletin, is The Potter and the Clay. And obviously I do have some visual aids as we talk about potters, pots, and clay. In Bible times, when prophets prophesied or Jesus told parables, they spoke of everyday things that people could understand and relate to in their day and time. There would be stories about farming and fishing and shepherding and pottery making. If Jesus was telling parables today, instead of the parable of the lost sheep, we might have the parable of the lost TV remote, something we can all relate to. Or instead of the parable of the sheep and the goats, we might have the parable of the iPhones versus the Android phones, because one group of people have chosen the phone that leads to salvation, and others not so much. And if you don't get the joke, you're too old, and just stick with the sheep and the goats. These kinds of stories or examples are called analogies. I can't even say it. An analogy is a comparison that helps you understand a complex idea in more familiar terms. Jesus' parables were examples of analogies. A simple example would be, her smile was like sunshine, brightening everyone's day. Most likely, her face wasn't really glowing, but we get the idea she's a happy, pleasant person. The Bible gives us several analogies where God is the potter and we are the clay, and we'll look at a few of those this morning. One example is from Isaiah 64:8. It says, "Yet you, Lord, are our Father, we are the clay, you are the potter, we are all the work of your hand." Or Isaiah 45:9. "Woe to those who quarrel with their maker, those who are nothing but potsherds among potsherds on the ground." And a potsherd is just the word for a broken piece of pottery. Does the clay say to the potter, "What are you making?" Does your work say, "The potter has no hands"? Not all analogies are warm and fuzzy. Essentially this morning, I'm going to be presenting an assortment of analogies rather than a conventional sermon. But in looking at these analogies, hopefully we're going to see how they may apply to our lives. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of making pottery. To begin with, in pottery, to make a pot, a cup, or a bowl, you obviously need clay. You don't necessarily need a potter's wheel, but I have one here. You also need a kiln or an oven to bake the clay so that the object can actually be used. Lastly, you need a potter with an idea of something to make. Also, there are many different kinds and colors of clay. There's gray clay, and brown clay, tan clay, terracotta clay, which is kind of an orange color, or white clay. Different kinds of clay have different properties. One category of clay is called earthenware. It makes good basic pottery, but it's not the most durable and can more easily break. Stoneware is a different kind of clay. It bakes at a higher temperature and as a result is harder and more resistant to breaking. Porcelain is another kind of clay that bakes at an even higher temperature and can be made very thin with delicate details that can be very beautiful. All these different kinds and colors of clay have different purposes and can be used to make all kinds of pots, jars, cups, bowls, and anything else you want to make. But sometimes in my life, I've thought, God, why did you make me like this? I want to be something else. But Paul, writing to the Romans, shows the flaw of such thinking. He says, one of you will say to me, meaning someone will say this to Paul, then why does God still blame us? For who is able to resist his will? But who are you, a human being, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, why did you make me this? Why did you make me like this? Does not the potter have the right to make out of the same lump of clay some pottery for special purposes and some for common use? God has a reason for making us the way we are. It might not always seem clear to us, but God has made us all as different pots with different uses, and we all have a part to play in the kingdom of God in general, and in this congregation in particular. We all have a function that is necessary to make the body complete. The Apostle Paul gives a longer analogy in 1 Corinthians 12. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but many. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. Like the spleen, we need those, I don't know. And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. So it's a long passage, but it explains how we're all part of this body. And whether we are talking about kinds of body parts, like in here, this passage, or kinds of clay and pots, We are all supposed to be united in making the church work. We are all part of this body of believers, even though we have different abilities, skills, and areas of giftedness. We may be made of different clays and made into different shapes, but each with a specific person. Now, if we were to all go down to the kitchen right now and look in the cupboards, we would see all kinds of dishes. I'll go back to my prop set here. If I go down to the kitchen and look, the cupboard's there's all kinds of dishes, but I'm not going to choose a plate to drink my cup of coffee. Bad idea, and that would end up with a mess on the floor, and Brent would have to come clean the carpet again. So we won't do that. Or if I wanted to eat my Thanksgiving dinner the next time we have our Thanksgiving, I'm not going to eat out of a coffee cup unless I go back many, many times. So all these things, each dish in the kitchen, each pot has a different use. As members of this congregation, we need to find what dish we are and do what we are designed by God to do. It takes all of us working together, using our skills and giftedness, and doing what we can to make the First Church of Christ in Owosso a successful witness in this community. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we need to get to work. All right. Get my apron here. Roll up my other sleeve first. Like I said, I thought about this a long time ago and I've been thinking about it, but I don't know if I really thought the practicality of trying to do this in the middle of a sermon. So we're going to see how it goes. Let's put it on right side out. All right. Any of you out there, potters? Come on down, Linda. Q, I need your help. All right. No, I don't really need it right now, but maybe. I don't want you to get all messed up, but maybe I'll need you in a minute. Linda was I took one art class in high school, and Linda was my teacher. So I'll blame this on her. But it was a drawing class, not a ceramics class, so. All right, now, somewhere I got the clay. I better take my watch off too. Oh, and I gotta move this now. Okay, we've got pretty much all the components here, but there's still a couple things we need to do. The clay needs a couple final steps. So, sure, now my clay. But normally, or often, we will cut the clay. We're looking for impurities. There might be a hair, there could be some piece of grit or dirt or something that's going to cause a problem, because anything that's not clay, when you go to fire it, it could explode in the clay, or it could be stuck on the outside and leave a blemish on the surface. So you got to check it to make sure that there's nothing inside that you don't want. And then you need to knead the clay. You need to roll it out. If there's any lumps inside, you got to make sure the lumps are smoothed out and blended in so that everything is nice and ready and perfect. It's like when God gets ready to put clay on the pot, it's perfect. He begins with perfect material. So once we have our clay kind of rolled out, we got to kind of make it into a cone or a ball and get it ready. How am I doing so far? All right. No, I'm talking to the potter. You guys don't know. All right. So I have my clay. And ideally, you have these little trays to catch all the mess. But if I do that, then you can't see anything. I don't know what you can see. I don't know if we can get a camera shot. But I'm going to take these off for now. And maybe regret it. But I practice. I kind of put a governor on it so that I can't get it to full speed. Otherwise, it would spray out. But I tested it yesterday, and it didn't go beyond the plastic. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, you have a lump of clay. It's now perfect. But the next step is we have to have it centered on the wheel. Interesting. Oh, that's because that got unplugged there. Whew. Had me scared. No, I'm still scared. There we go. Okay. It'll work. The clay has to be centered. If the clay is not centered, it's really hard to work on when it's going around like that. And it can fall right off. So it's important. We need to have, the clay needs to be clean and pure. The clay needs to be centered. That's how God creates. And then we get it in the center. And there's little rings on here. I'm not a good centerer yet. I took a class about 50 years ago. Well, 52 years ago. And then I took another class after I retired a couple of years ago. And kept thinking about this. I'm still within the range. All right, I'm not going too far. I'll have an extra cleaning bill with my wife, but so then it takes water to get it smooth. You got to make sure that it's centered. I was going to make sure I did that before I took those off, but once we get it going, well, there we go. Well, it's a messy job, especially when you take the stupid splash guards off. But this way you can at least see something rather than, and maybe that's what I shouldn't do, is have you see something. But once you get it in the shape where it's reasonably centered, it should be perfectly centered. But now's when I need the powder. But at some point then, when you feel you're ready, you begin to go down in and open up your clay, And if I'm smart, I should stop here. There, it's a lovely little bowl. Yay, Jay. But we're here to make a little more of a mess. So when we get our bottom established and smoothed out, then we can begin to draw the sides up. And then you make it a little taller. And we got kind of a, and we have, as I said, we have some tools. We can do things, and we trip over the cord. I'm just here for entertainment purposes, that's all. And if, yeah, thank you. Shh. I suppose I could stop it and I could get that more easily. We want to trim it, and then we can decide what we want to do. So if I want to make a bigger bowl, I can just kind of lean it out. If I decide I don't really like that, I can bring it back in. The potter decides. And as we work on living our lives, we don't get to choose what was made. We're not the potter. Well, we're going to have a collapse here in a minute. Like I say. All right, and then we can... Nope. We went too far, Jay. And sometimes the potter has to start over. But you get the idea, anyway, that in the creative process, God chooses what to make and how it's made. And I made a really nice one at home just the other day. But it's how it goes sometimes. And this is one of the parts I hadn't thought about, was the messy part. And the fact that in that closet behind the, I left my paper towel. If someone could find my paper towel, that would be helpful. Oh, it is here? All right, it's in the bucket. All right, even better. Thanks. That should be good enough. Shh, don't. Be careful with it. Yeah. All right, I'm good enough to go on. All right, thank you. You get an assist. I was intending to practice more, but the kneading and the whatever really messed up with my shoulder, because my shoulder's bad. So I didn't get as much practice as I needed. Anyway, moving on.
Great job.
You get the idea anyway. So we need to remember the words of God, from Ephesians, where Paul says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God has prepared in advance for us to do." We need to understand who we are in our relationship with God. And even if I can't make a good pot, God can. Okay. But sometimes I used to think I wanted to be a big fancy pot. There may be a picture here in a minute. There we go. Big fancy pot. This one is worth more than $20,000. But being a big important vase like that comes with more responsibility, usually more work, and has more people looking critically over your shoulder saying, "Can't you be more than just a vase and hold flowers? What else can you do?" So, at other times, I've thought a simpler pot might be better for me. This one's valued about $2, but whatever pot you are, $20,000 to $2 or anything in between, you still have a use and a function. Do it. Do the job God has made you able to do. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I think it's important. God doesn't give us jobs we can't do, but there are tasks we don't want to do because they may be hard. Sometimes we don't do the job God has prepared us for because we claim we don't have the time, or we don't believe we can do it, or we're afraid of failure. I've been on that one. 20 years ago, I would have said, I'm not a preacher, and we'll judge here soon if I am or not. But 20 years ago, I decided that if I was asked to do something, I would be willing to try. And even if the task was something I felt was difficult or out of my comfort zone, I would still try and do it. So here I am. I encourage you to try those things too, whatever it is. Even though we may be fearful or seem inadequate, those of us who have already made a commitment to Jesus should have a different perspective. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness." This is Genesis 1:1. Let there be light. Let light shine out of darkness. He made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. We are those earthen vessels, those jars made of clay. We hold the treasure of Jesus within us. And because we have this treasure, this power, the living glory of God within us, we can endure what comes in the middle part of that passage. We may be hard-pressed on every side, but our jars are strong. We won't be crushed. We may be perplexed or confused, but our trust in Jesus will keep us from despair. Persecution can come, but Jesus, the Son of God, will be by our side, and he will not abandon us. Even if we are struck down, Jesus will be there to lift us up. It isn't always easy, but he is there to protect our jars. There may be some scratches or a chip or two on our jar, but perhaps they are there to remind us of all we have come through, and that becomes a part of our witness to others. But did I lose a spot? No. But it isn't just those long-lost souls that can harden. We people who have given our lives to Jesus, been baptized, and attend church regularly can also become hardened. It can be pride. People don't recognize just how great I am, so I won't do anything. Or I have some secret little sin on the side that isn't too bad, but slowly it has put distance between them and Jesus. Or there may be a forgiveness issue. I can't, I won't forgive that person for what they did. Sometimes we become dried out like a piece of clay. Here's our dried out clay. But back to this bowl. As I said, it's dry, all the water is gone. It is hard. I can't shape it anymore. It represents many of those people we know who are far from God. The bowl, like people, will not budge. It may also represent us who are not fully living our best lives for God, whether it represents someone we know or ourselves. This bowl can no longer be changed. I did miss a page somewhere. Is it important? No. We'll go on. We'll back up. How did I miss that? And I got clay behind my ear now. Anyway, there's one last analogy about pots. Before a pot can be fired, it has to dry. All the moisture has to be out of the clay before it can be fired. Any water trapped in the clay may boil, turn to steam, and it can cause the pot to explode in the kiln. That's not good. But when the moisture is out and the pot is waiting to be fired, it can't be molded or shaped anymore. If the pot isn't fired, then it won't be functional. If you put water in this bowl, you'll just get muddy soup. Firing the pot is transformational. As the clay gets hotter, it begins to shrink. The pores in the clay get smaller and it becomes more dense and the clay begins to fuse. The heat changes the structure of the clay and makes it hard so the pot can be usable. It's almost like a metamorphosis. Pots generally go on to be glazed, but we don't have time for a discussion on glazes today. Maybe that's my next sermon. But this is a pot that has been fired. It has been changed. This is the first pot I threw 52 some years ago. And when it's fired, it sounds almost like glass. This one hasn't been changed. It's not ready yet to be a bowl. But now we need to back up a little to the time before the pot is fired. The bowl or pot or dish has been made. It's all dried out and can't be changed. It is kind of like what we see in people. We may have friends, family, acquaintances, or even enemies that seem so far from God, we can't envision how they will find their way to Jesus, or in some cases, back to Jesus. They are hardened like this bowl. It may be a friend that has never accepted Jesus. It may be a child that has walked away from God and now living the life of the prodigal son or daughter. It could even be a high school friend or coworker living such an openly ungodly life, it doesn't seem possible for them to change. Those people are represented by this pot. Let's look at an example of a child or other family member that has walked away from God, or perhaps just never made a decision to follow God. We can try to talk to them, but now they get angry if you even mention God. We pray for them, but nothing seems to change. They are immovable, just like this bowl where the clay refuses to move. It seems impossible they will ever change. There is nothing more we can do. It can be heartbreaking because we want so much for them to be saved and follow Jesus. But it isn't just those long-lost souls that can harden. We people who have given our lives to Jesus, been baptized, attend church regularly, can also become hardened. As I said, it can be pride. It can be some secret little sin. It can be a forgiveness issue. But this bowl is hard. I can't shape it anymore. It represents all those people we know who are far from God. The bowl-like people will not budge. It may also represent us who are not fully living our best lives for God. Whatever it represents, whether it represents someone we know or ourselves, this bowl cannot be changed. Even God can't reshape this hardened shell of a person. For these people, God has a different plan. Oh, that broke a little more than I thought. Oh, well. These pieces still can't be molded. They still can't be changed. We can't put this pot back together, obviously. It will never be a bowl again. But what God does, we can take these pieces, put them back in a pot or a bucket, and we add a little water. The clay will begin to absorb the moisture. The clay will soften. And before long, it can be made into a new pot again. Not everyone needs to be shattered. Sometimes we just need to surrender our will and choose to follow Jesus.